Welcome to the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This podcast is dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like all the best bookshops, this podcast is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. So tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book at the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. I'm Stacey Horan, author, book lover, and host of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This is episode number 256. For more information about this or any of our episodes, go to my website, staceyhoran.com. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review, like us on social media, and share us with your friends, family, and fellow readers. In today's episode of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet, I'm chatting with author Marty Neumeier about his new thriller, Octavo. This didactic novel delves into the nature of creativity while spinning a thrilling tale through two storylines. One is set during the Renaissance and follows the last pupil of Leonardo DaVinci, who writes an adventurous account of the lengths he and Da Vinci go through to get Da Vinci's notebooks published. There is a mystery surrounding why and how the notebooks fail to be published, and Marty's tale shows Da Vinci in the role of detective, trying to solve the mystery. The second storyline is set in modern times and features two art authenticators who are thrown together for the task of authenticating several pieces of art. While going about their work, the authenticators discover the manuscript. Determined not to let the manuscript meet the same fate as Da Vinci's notebooks, they hatch a plan to steal it, which leads to even more adventure. In this episode, I'll chat with Marty about his writing journey, the meaning behind the title, Octavo, and his unique approach to publishing this novel, which included serialization on Substack, as well as a few other things. Coming up. Marty Neumeier, thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you, Stacey. It's great to be here.
I thought what we could do today is start by talking about your new book, Octavo. If you don't mind, tell us a little about this book and what inspired you to write it.
Octavo is a thriller, well, suspense, because it has a thriller aspect and a mystery aspect. And it's also a didactic novel. So I'm using the novel as much to explain a few things about creativity, but also explain it in a way that's thrilling. That's a great ride for people. So it works on several levels, but I do have a motive behind it other than just entertainment.
Care to share?
No.
Okay.
Kidding. You can't stop me from sharing. That is the problem you're going to face here. Well, the story is about it's a two-level story, one from the Renaissance and one in modern times. And the Renaissance story is about the last pupil of Leonardo da Vinci. His name is Francesco Melzi, and he was Leonardo's last pupil. And in my story, he has written an account of an adventure that the two of them took to get Leonardo's notebooks published, the famous notebooks that we all know so well. You know, his whole goal in life was to get these things published before he died, and he failed. And that's the crux of the story. How did he fail? What happened? So we don't know, except that probably the usual things is he got sidetracked and put it off too late until he's too old to do it. And then he gave the assignment to his pupil, who was still young, and his pupil failed to do it. And so there's a tragedy in this, and that's what got me to read it, to want to write about it. So the story is they go to get the books published on horseback to Venice. They go to the most famous print shop of the day, which is the basis of so many things in publishing now, and the place is called the Aldine Press. He won't trust anybody else with his notebooks, and so when he gets there with his student, they go to the print shop and there's a crowd of people standing around, and they push their way through the crowd and they look into the dim interior of the print shop, and there's a man crucified to the press. So the whole, big crime scene, and he shows his intelligence right there, Sherlock Holmes style, except maybe better, I think, and realizes that if he doesn't solve this mystery, the print shop will stay closed because the police will not open it until they solve the crime, and they don't really care about the crime. They've got bigger things on their plate. So he's got to do it. And so he shows every skill he has during the course of this mystery. So there's the manuscripts. But in the modern times, two women, art authenticators, are assigned to go together. They've never worked together before, and they're thrown together in a townhouse in outside of Milan to authenticate some art pieces that look like they're pretty meaningful for a client, for a rich collector. And in the process of analyzing those and figuring out who did the paintings and if they were valuable, they find this manuscript that it was overlooked in a pile of stuff that was discovered under the floorboards of the townhouse. And so they realize they find out what it is, they figure out what it is, and they realize this is super important information for history, for the world. And they resolve not to let the same thing happened to Leonardo that happened before, which is his notebooks got lost and everyone was deprived of his thinking for 200 years until they finally resurfaced. They didn't want that to happen, and they knew that their client would take this manuscript and bury it in his vault, and that would be that. So they resolved to steal it, and that leads them on an adventure, right? So they're driving across Italy, checking on all the scenes from the story to authenticate it and to translate the book, the manuscript as they go, and then feed that to a publisher who they managed to convince to publish a stolen manuscript. So those two stories run in parallel. So that's the concept of the book. And the other thing is that the whole thing is in dialogue because it's all about one of the women has dysgraphia, which means it's difficult for her to write things out. So she prefers to use voice files. So she sends voice files from her phone to the publisher. He sends back brief emails. And so almost the whole thing is in dialogue. And it's them relating this story, their story of how they're doing with this manuscript, but also translating it on the fly until you get the translation. And the interesting thing, the reason I chose that structure is because it makes for a very interesting audiobook. And I'm thinking an audiobook has maybe a better chance of getting noticed these days than a print book because it's a younger, smaller marketplace. And if you can do something different in that area, you can get attention there, and that attention will reflect back on the print book because it's difficult being discovered. I'm a almost 78-year-old, debut fiction writer. So, I don't have a lot of time to get this to work. And so I'm using my marketing and branding skills, which is my day job, to kind of reinvent indie publishing. And I've taken a pretty different approach to it. And so far it seems to be turning out well. And I'm hoping that I can share this with everybody if it's successful, and I'll just lay the whole thing out, what worked, what didn't work. But it seems like it's going to work. It's not like self-publishing. Self-publishing is where you write a book and you just put it out there and you tell your friends. Indie publishing means you're committed to competing with the big five, but you can't do it their way because they have deep pockets and great connections and a process and all that. You just can't do it that way. It has to be almost the opposite. So that's what I've been doing this year, is laying all that out. But the ability to do that is baked into the structure of the book.
Well, let's talk about that, your approach in particular. We can come back to the story in a little bit, but I think now's probably a good time to describe how you have shared this book, your approach to putting it out in the world. Because as you said, it's very different.
Yeah.
from the way it's normally done.
Right. Well, let me just step back and say that how I came to this was through a publisher that I had lined up for the book. I got a publisher right away for it. I went to Thriller Fest and got two offers right away. One of them was amazing. Just their idea was amazing. It's a startup company that wants to take a. They're basing their work on stories. The story is the centerpiece of everything they do. They want to publish it as a book, as an interactive audiobook, a socialized audiobook that they're inventing. Take that into theatrical ebook. I'm sorry, it's a socialized ebook, so you can talk with other readers while you're reading and stuff like that. Into a theatrical audiobook, which was my idea. And then take that into a streaming series on TV. And they're building a studio to do that in the most modern, lightweight way. And all that's great. And I'm totally for them. But it was just taking too long. They were finding it was more difficult to do what they wanted to do than they thought. And I thought, I can't, I waited 4 years for them to get their stuff together, and it's not really close enough. So I decided I would take what I could from that, the discussions I've had with them, and then apply that to things I know from branding and marketing, and create my own sort of lighter weight version of that, and keep the movie making out of it and let that happen on its own if it's going to happen. But certainly controlling the 4 versions of the book that I have out now. So that's what I did. And it turns out that the way to do this, it looks like, is to do it the opposite of the way the big 5 do it. So a big 5 publisher is looking for a guaranteed hit. And they've got committees that you have to get through that are going to, like, any one of those people can say, no, I don't like it. I don't think it's going to work. I've never seen this work before. So no, I'm a no on this. You're not going to get people just kind of just saying, I don't care. I'm going to take a flyer, because the money is just it's too much, So the initial investment in a new book is too high to take risks with. So that means anything different is going to get ruled out. And when you look back at the history of books, all the ones that we revere today started out as different. They started out they would never make it through the gauntlet. So we have to do it in a different way. So the best way to do this is to reverse. So, let me just say this, that the publishers, because there's so much pressure to have a hit, they put all the money up front. They dedicate, let's say $1 million to launching a book. So they have to produce the book in, hardcover. They have to set up all the publicity. They have to do marketing. They get sales. The salespeople are, have to be trained in the book, and they have to go out and sell it and all this kind of stuff. It's a lot of money up front. And then if it fails, like most of them do, they lose out. So they're just hoping one of these is going to be a big hit. But they're ruling out the chance of ever having like a big long-term hit, the next Frankenstein, let's say, or something like that. It would just, Frankenstein would never make it through. If it's, if it was like that in those days, it never would have been published. So what we indie people have to do is reverse the whole thing. We have to start out, it's called stage gate innovation. I learned this from working in Silicon Valley. This is how venture capitalists build a company or a product up until can scale up. So they will start with, if you have an idea and you go to a venture capitalist, they'll say, okay, do you have a business plan? Well, no, it's just an idea at this stage. And then we got a few sketches. Okay, it looks interesting. I've never seen this before. And that's a good start. So why don't I'm going to give you $1,000, and you go back and you come up with a business plan, and we'll look at that and see what you're thinking, and we'll see some numbers. Bring that back. Okay, we got some numbers, and they look, could turn out this way, but numbers don't mean anything without a product. So I'm going to give you $10,000, and you're going to do a prototype of this, and you're going to test the prototype with some early adopters to see how it goes, and then come back and we'll talk. And they do that, and they come back and say, yeah, we think it's going to work. We need to do this and this and this, but so far it's promising. And then the venture capitalists say, yeah, I think it is promising. So I'm going to give you $100,000 and you're going to make a prototype of this. And we're going to test it in a small, or you're going to do a small run of this product, or we're going to test it off Broadway, where it can't do any damage and if you fail. And then they build it up from there. So that's the opposite of the way book publishers do it. They just take this huge risk and actually they don't want to take a risk. So they actually play it safe and they come up with something that gives them safe results, which is hardly anything. Right? So they just don't have a way to take any risks, but venture capitalists have that figured out. So with a book, you can do something similar. You can, first of all, you can write it along with your readers. You can have the readers weigh in on it as you're writing it. You can just publish it on Substack or something like that. I do it by just finding 100 people that are interested in reading the book, and I give them the book, and I say, this is a first draft, but I really want your feedback, and your feedback's going to make a difference. And so then I go and do a second draft, and I find out, oh, the ending's all wrong, or I screwed something up, like some little thing is going to blow up in my face because it's a let's say today it might be a gender issue or something like that. You just had, I'm going to get canceled if I do it like this. But anyway, you find all that out before you even design the book. It's still the cement is still wet. Okay, so then the next thing you do is, next thing I did is put it on Substack and serialized it, because there's still a chance to change it if I get feedback that doesn't work, or people lose interest and they wander away because the book is just not gripping them. So that gives me new information. So with Octavo, I serialized the text, which I already had completely finished. Doesn't have to be that way, but I've already tested it, so I didn't need to test it again. I needed to test whether there was a big enough audience for it to spend more money on it. So I did that, and I did a theatrical full cast audio version of the book because it was designed for that. And I ran those simultaneously on Substack and got a lot of people saying nice things about it. So it looked good. So the next thing is, while that's being serialized, I started building the products to go in a very lightweight form. So no hardcover for sale in bookstores, because you need to print 10,000 of something to get any profit out of it, and so you don't want to be stuck with 10,000 books. It's happened before. It's not fun. So, I set it up for an audiobook, an ebook, which is just a normal ebook, but a little bit nicer, a print-on-demand hardcover and a print-on-demand softcover, all at the same time to go up on Amazon and be available for stores and so forth. So that's up now. And if that does well and I get traction on the book, I'll come back with a deluxe version of the book for stores. And it'll be like a $30 book with a beautiful binding, something special, like not an ordinary, just a run-of-the-mill, general quality book. It'll be something good because I know I have the audience for it. And the same people that bought an ebook might want to buy a souvenir copy of or give it away as a gift or something like that. But I'm not going to do that first, because that's a huge part of the expense, is paying for your own, printing a hardcover book. But the plan is all in place. So I just have to go through these stages, these stage gates, and see if it works. And I can make changes at different stages. I could even change the copy in the book if I needed to for the final book. So that's how I'm doing it. And what it does is keep your expenses way down. You do have to spend money on publicity. So that's the secret that I think a lot of self-publishers don't get. It's that you actually need to get this into people's hands, and there's no easy way to do that. It's not going to happen word of mouth. It would be a miracle if that happened. Even the guy who had a big success with The Martian had to sell it out of his car for years before he got enough people. I mean, he really worked to get that thing out. It'd be much better if you had some dollars for publicity and just do it faster. So you have to do that, but it's much less money than a big five publisher would spend, because you're doing it in a way that builds up from something inexpensive to something more expensive. And you can stop it at any stage. If it's not working, then you just go back to being a self-publisher and get it out there, and it'll plug along and you'll make some money, but it won't be the hit that you hoped. But then it probably wasn't ever good enough to be a hit. It wasn't right for the time or the audience. And those are things that are just really hard to tell unless you try it. So this is just a safer way to do something bold.
Right.
There was one thing I didn't say about the process. So I've talked about the print on demand books, but the other thing I did is the first thing I printed was this book here. Anyway, this cost $60 each to print. It's a very short run. It's got decal edges. It's got this really cool binding. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like exoskeletal binding where the spine is stuck on the inside instead of wrapping. It's got nothing on the cover except an abbreviation for Octavo. So that's pretty radical. And this is the way it's selling in the stores and online. There's no title, no author. It's all on the spine with also the first sentence of the story, because we writers are really into first sentences.
They are.
So anyway, but that book, I splurged on that because that's key to getting reviewers interested in the book, possible filmmakers. I sent some to filmmakers that I think are interested in Leonardo. I know are interested in Leonardo, and also I give them away to my founding subscribers on Substack. They get one of these free sent to them before the book comes out.
Is there a way for people to get it?
They can still get it. If they want to go to Substack and sign up as a founding member, they can get this book.
Oh.
It's the only way. To me, as a designer, this is a gutsy move. And I was hesitant to do it, not put my name on it or not put the title on the cover, because in bookstores, if it's cover out, this is what you're going to see. That's all you're going to see. But luckily, my publishers that I had lined up tested it with all their salespeople, and they went into stores with a prototype of it, and people loved it. The stores loved it. They were going to say, we'll put this face out just because of that, not because you're paying us. So that's a first. The binding is a first. Putting the name of the first sentence of a novel on the cover on the spine is a first. Nothing on the back. No selling copy.
That's sleek.
So when you see it open, it looks like that.
Yeah, in keeping with doing things very differently from how
everything's
done.
I've had my best success with just reinventing everything all the time. So
right.
Why not?
Good. Okay. So let's talk about a few of those pieces, because I'm sure people are probably wondering, like, what came first? The chicken or the egg? What came first for you with this? Was it the idea for the book, or was it the idea for the approach? Like, if you're going to do this, this is maybe the way to do it. And then you find a story that you think
it was the story. For sure, it was the story. So
okay.
I had written a nonfiction book before called Meta Skills, about the future of work in the age of AI, which is ahead of its time. It's because it came out in 2013, and now we're interested in it. So it's like 10 years later, people are starting to buy the book. But in the process of doing the research, I discovered this thing about Leonardo, and it just haunted me. I just felt so sad about Leonardo, and his life was actually kind of a tragedy because of this failure to publish these books. And history has suffered. And now we're in a position where we need art and science to be together, and they're not, and they undermine each other. So instead of 1 and 1 should add up to 3. So that's a tragedy, and I just wanted to tell that story. And so that was a question of how do you tell it? And my first thought was, well, I'll just tell the story of the Renaissance story and how it happened. And then as I was researching it, I started to realize, well, there's a lot of things you could write about, but you'd have to explain them because, 500 years is a long time. And people won't really understand, unless they know that period, they won't really understand what you're saying as well as they should. And it'll just be kind of like there'll be gauzy screen in front of you in the story. So I thought, well, maybe I need some narrators. And I was thinking about how Sherlock Holmes, like if he told his own story, it wouldn't make any sense to you. He needed Watson to tell it, right?
Right, right.
The ordinary narrator, this guy, friend of his, who can explain it to you. So I thought, well, it's still going to be difficult over a 500-year gap. So I'll have modern people explain it. And so what kind of circumstance could I create that would allow them to be talking about this? And so all this stuff sort of floats around in your head until it finally gels and you go, oh my God, there it is. Fully formed, it just took a while to incubate. But so that's when I thought, well, what if I make this an audiobook? And how would I do that? Make a really cool audiobook that's like none that's ever been done before. And so they figured out, well, you just have the narrators make voice files, and then that's the audiobook. You just
So
act that out.
because much of this story, as it was incubating, as you were forming it, was the idea was that it was going to be an audio book, which I think for a lot of authors, that's sort of
Pretty
secondary.
quickly, yeah. When I finally cracked the structure, it all fell into place. I thought, well, if I can make it a hit as an audiobook or get attention as an audiobook, that might be like a side door to come in to that. The big five is like they're blind to that because there's not enough money in audiobooks to just do an audio first
Right.
book. But then I thought, well, also doing it as an audiobook would make a very interesting print book because now you've got the whole thing's told in it's epistolic. Is that the right word? Epistolary. So it's in little bite-sized pieces that come from different places. And so I'm intrigued by that kind of book. I also saw it as a typographic challenge, and I'm a designer, so this is falling right into my strength. Is like I can use different typefaces for different sources, and it's going to all fit together really nicely and be super interesting. Even though it's made up of all these little pieces, it could flow really nicely and look nice in a way that a normal book doesn't have that capability. So a lot of things came together, and this is the experience of being a designer and having to build complex projects enabled me to think in those terms. And then once I had the structure, and I could see, okay, so I could unpack this structure and turn it into marketing, like use each piece differently. And then I knew I had it, and I felt confident going and writing the rest of the book.
Was there ever a point where you had to step back and change directions, or did it flow the way you conceptualized it? Did it all come together pretty much the way you thought it would, or were there definite changes you had to make along the way?
Yes, to all. Well, so some of your audience consists of writers, and we all have heard the idea that there are pantsers and planners. I'm a planner. I'm definitely a planner, but I also feel that there's a huge role for pantsing in the planning and after the planning. So to me, the planning part, the outline, is a creative act. It's if it doesn't work as an outline, if it's not surprising as an outline, then it would be a very boring book, right? At the same time, you want to leave enough room for surprises to happen in the internal writing of the story. So even though you're on a safe path because you know the trajectory is going to work, you just need to make sure that it doesn't get dull and perfunctory as you're writing it, so that it just sounds like you're going through the motions. It has to surprise you as the author. So I left room for that, and there were some things. Like everyone also knows that the middle of a book can be like a swamp. It can really slow down the reading and everything because a lot of things have to happen that are not necessarily exciting. So you have to keep it exciting. And that led me to do just something that counterintuitive was, instead of adding a lot of exciting things in, I went with the idea that the middle is a different part. And I turned it into a dinner party. The whole middle of the book is the dinner party that's actually part of solving the mystery. And that's where you get to hear a lot of philosophy from Leonardo and all his talented friends from the period, who are real people, and I fictionalize them, but based on the known facts about them. And that becomes like almost a play inside in the middle of the story, and then then it takes off again and goes out into the world. But that gave me a chance to describe Leonardo's life, his studio, what the people around him were like. And there's not a lot known about Leonardo, but I felt like I had a handle on this because in doing my research, I was looking through tax records of Florence, looking at all the studios and how they made their money, how many people they employed, how big their studios were, where they were located, all this stuff. And it all started to sound very familiar to me as a previous studio owner. It's like exactly how we do it today. All creative businesses follow that same plan. They have the same structure of their business. The places where they work are similar. The places they locate their businesses relative to the center of town is the same. It's like I knew I had it. I knew that Leonardo was not going to be opaque to me. And the more I started writing it, the more it started to feel really real to me. And I hope readers feel the same thing. But a lot of it just had to be manufactured because we don't have any letters from him. We have a few letters. One of the letters a couple letters are in the story verbatim. But from those, I was able to understand the style and the concerns and the personalities and so forth. And so I just had to make all that stuff up. So that's the fun part. But I think if you're a Leonardo, if there are any Leonardo aficionados out there, historians, you're going to read the book, and I think you're going to say it's pretty accurate maps to the history pretty well. And I just happened to find a little space, like a 1 year space, where there's not a lot of information on what he was doing. And all the things fell together perfectly. That's when I knew I had it. It's just the timing of it. There's nothing in his history to contradict the story that I made up. It could have happened. So that, for me, that was a thrill.
To think it did.
It might have happened. I mean, it's possible. It's one of maybe a million things that could have happened.
Right.
But I think historians would enjoy how I was able to play with it and how well it fits with the actual history that we know. There are probably a few things. Some really people who are deep into it would go, no, he couldn't have been in a studio on October 31st because he went to Florence to visit his family that day,
right,
or something
right,
like that
right.
week. I don't care about that. So I'm not looking for perfection here. I'm looking for a believable story.
Right. Well, it sounds in everything you've described that it always comes back to the story.
Always.
And so everything else is in service of that story.
Yeah. Including the marketing. If the book doesn't get out, to me, a novel isn't really a novel if it doesn't have readers. It's just writing. A book, it's not a book until it's consummated in the marketplace. And so without that, I'm going to call it a partial failure. But of course, we're all used to that. All books are failures. And, and it's very, very difficult to get a good book into the marketplace. You can get a decent book into the marketplace and it'll do well, but a great book, I'm not saying it's great, but I want to give myself a chance for it to prove itself anyway.
Right.
So an author is not in a position to say whether his book or her book is great. That's all up to readers. So right. I've put everything into it so that it can be taken out, and we'll just have to see if it's on the mark or not. And if it's not, well, that's on me, right? I missed it. But I've taken every opportunity to test it as I wrote it with people. And I'm feeling pretty strong about it. But I also think whenever you do something different, it takes an extra push to get it into the marketplace.
Yeah.
It's not going to go in easily.
Right.
I have to sort of find people who are open enough to take in something a little bit new, and also connected well enough that they tell other people. And so that's part of the process, is finding those people. And I have a lot of them in my following already for my other books, but my nonfiction books. So I'm leaning on that, but we'll see. I mean, you just don't know. But I just know that it doesn't fit well with the big five idea of what a current book should look like.
Right.
And I don't want it to be either. So
yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the title, Because I'm sure people
Oh,
who were like
Octavo, yes.
Octavo,
What is
it's
that? What does that mean? Okay, that goes to the concept of the Renaissance story. So this is really a book about books. Because I take the reader back to the beginning of book publishing in at the Aldine Press in Venice. There were other publishers, of course, but this one was the most influential one. I mean, they had a typesetter there who was to die for, Francesco Grifo, and Grifo invented italics. And his boss, Aldo, invented punctuation, or at least he promoted it in his books. There was no punctuation, there was like little markers, but he invented the period and the comma and the semicolon. Very influential. It's just this little hole in the wall in Venice started all this stuff. So I bring people back there. And now I forgot how I started off on this. What was the question?
about the title, meaning of the title.
Okay, so an octavo is a folding pattern for printing paper. So you take a sheet of paper, you fold it in half, you fold it in half again, and you fold it in half one more time. That gives you 8 panels. And then when you consider the other side of the sheet, that's 16 pages. 16 pages is what we call a signature, but they call it an octavo. And that is the basis of how books are still made today. So if I pull a book off my shelf that's a 6x9 novel, for example, that's the same size exactly as what they were printing at the beginning of the printing revolution. So they had sheets that would fit that press that you can get 16 pages out of, and that was the size of the press. Octavo is that folding pattern, and then Octavo became the name that they applied to this sort of book that they were publishing, which was new because it was portable. So these were portable books, whereas the other books were so big you had to put them on a stand or on a table. They were all handmade and they were manuscripts basically that were bound in a book. These were printed books, and they were all the same pretty much, one after another, and they were putting them into hands of people who they weren't poor people who, they were still expensive, but you could carry them around with you. So the merchant down in the square could have his own copy of a book, and he could read, you know, Plato or something in actual Italian instead of, you know, Latin or Greek or whatever they were, printing at the time, or copying at the time. So it was a big change in culture that when people got to read books in their own language, and some of them could afford the books. And that was really the basis of the scientific revolution, because you could print your scientific ideas and get them into other people's hands.
Yeah.
It took a while, but that's where it started.
And we should mention that the plan is that this is book one of a series.
Yeah, it can be. Again, this is the sketched out plan.
Mm-hmm.
It turns into a dotted line after Octavo, but the second book is drafted, and I'm happy with it. But I think it'll improve as I'll probably do another draft. I'll put it onto Substack and get feedback, and then I'll rewrite it again, and so forth. Go through the whole process again. I probably won't want to do the whole publishing thing again, just because I have too many projects going on. So I'm hoping to find a publisher who uses a similar idea and is willing to take all that part on. But that one's ready to go. And then there's a third book that it was half written, and I'm throwing that away. It pains me because I put a lot of work into that one, and I love the way it was going. But the problem is that reality has outpaced my imagination on this one, and the world that we're entering, that the world described in that book is the one we already are entering right now. And I think it's too late. I was not ahead of, I should have done that one 5 years ago. But nobody saw AI coming. Nobody saw autocracy taking over the world. I mean, we're in a bad situation. So I think there's going to be too many books. By the time that one gets put out, it's going to be old hat. And so I'm just, I may use it in some other form, or maybe have to totally rewrite it. But yeah, I always plan on a series, and that all depends on the success of the first one. If the first one doesn't sell, go on to something else.
Right. Right.
You have to. Okay. And to be ready for that second one, I had to have it written. So there it is.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, we will look forward to what the future holds for you and the and the books.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been great to talk to you.
Well, if people want to find you and
Yeah.
information, where should they go?
So right now, the book is still on Substack. If you want to read the serialized form or listen to the serialized audiobook, it's there. But it's moving from the free side. It just moved from the free side to the pay side. So it's $5 a month. You could probably read the whole thing in a month for $5. Or you can subscribe for a year and get all the other stuff that I'm sending. But so the way I'm using Substack now is I'm serializing books on the free side, and then we're talking about them on the pay side, because the talking is the interesting part for my audience. They're writers or designers, and they want to, get their hands dirty with this stuff and talk about it. So that's why it's split into two. So I'll be switching on the free side, I'm switching to Meta Skills, my other book, which a lot of people haven't read because it was ahead of its time. So now we're going to be able to break that up into smaller chapters and talk about those on the pay side, and that'll last, 8 months or something. Meanwhile, Octavo will be there for people on the pay side also. And right now the books are out. They're on Amazon is the easiest place, but you can get them in bookshop.org, which is nice. So I've got paperback, hardcover, audiobook, and ebook all at the same time.
Good.
Pick your poison.
Well, Marty, thanks so much for joining me today on the podcast. And I want to wish you luck with Octavo. And the second book, fingers crossed that all this works out and we can see the second book sooner rather than
let's
never.
Hope. Well, if this one, I'm ready with it. I'm ready with it when you are. So let's see. That book will be called Quetzal. Quetzal is a tropical bird. And so you can let your imagination go wild with that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Good. Well, thank you again for joining me, and best of luck with the rest of your writing journey.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everybody. Talk soon.
The Bookshop at the End of the Internet is a podcast dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like any good bookshop, this podcast features a wide variety of books by the equally varied and interesting authors who felt compelled to write them. This podcast gives you a chance to meet these wonderful writers and discover your next must-read book. Listen to the authors describe their books and tell you their stories in their own words. My interviews feature books from all genres and authors from all walks of life, including those who are indie published as well as those published by small presses and large publishing houses. Looking for unique, not so easy to find books for yourself, a friend, or a book club? Tune into this podcast and find your newest favorite author or maybe a soon-to-be bestseller. This podcast, like all the best bookshops, is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. Tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book. You never know what treasures you might find in the Bookshop at the End of the Internet.